All right, hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of the GatesAir Connect Virtual Events webinar series. In cooperation with NAB Show Express, today's webinar, Business Implications for NextGen TV, is a special event co-presented by Rick Ducey of BIA Advisory Services and the NAB's own Sam Matheny. To give broadcasters some great ideas and realistic expectations about the potential impact of ATSC 3.0 on the industry, this webinar will explore new and updated business models and deployment approaches associated with this exciting new television standard, so you can't miss this one. But before we begin, let's take a quick 3-minute break to allow everybody who registered a chance to join. So please sit back and relax, and we will see you in 3. All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to the GatesAir Connect Virtual Events webinar series. This is Keith Adams, Global Marketing Communications Manager for GatesAir, and thanks for being here today to share in a very special virtual event that we know you're going to love. For the past 5 weeks, we've been presenting a variety of webinars meant to keep you informed and engaged on all things transmission and transport based, in honor of several conferences that have been canceled or postponed for pandemic-related public safety reasons. So today we're very proud to team up with the biggest of those conferences, the NAB Show, for an exclusive lead-in event for tomorrow's NAB Show Express, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Our very special guest today, Rick Ducey, who's the Managing Director of BIA Advisory Services, and Sam Matheny, who's the Chief Technology Officer of the NAB, bring you today's webinar, which is titled Business Implications for NextGen TV. Mr. Ducey will explore broadcast business models being considered for ATSC 3.0, aka NextGen TV for those consumers out there, and the kinds of expectations that agencies and marketers should have for NextGen TV. While Mr. Matheny will discuss the status of the rollout of ATSC 3.0 and how stations are deploying this new broadcast standard. So you picked a great virtual event to attend today. believe it. So we'll have a question and answer session at the end of this presentation. We encourage you to type in any questions that you might have in the Microsoft Teams Q&A panel. I'm going to send out a quick announcement so that you know where that is if you don't already. And we'll answer these questions in a first come, first served manner. So feel free to enter them as soon as you think of any. So without further ado, let's start this webinar. Please allow me to welcome Mr. Rick Ducey. Rick, if you could share your screen.
All right, let's see. All right, am I sharing it now?
Yes, you are. Looking good.
Excellent. Okay, great, Keith. Thank you so much. A pleasure to be here. And it's always a pleasure to share the stage with my friend Sam Matheny, virtual or otherwise. So I'm looking forward to the things that Sam will have to say also. So it's great to be here and talking about one of our favorite subjects, ATSC 3.0, aka NextGen TV. There's so many exciting possibilities. The technology platforms and app stack that sits on top of 3.0 is going to be very transformational, I think, and we think at BIA. So we're kind of excited for what will go on in the industry and the whole ecosystem, advertising, marketers, audiences, programmers, station groups. There's just so much happening. However, when you do something new, people do something. They say, huh? You know, what does it mean? What's going on? So one of the things that we've been doing is talking to different groups, different parts of the ecosystem, if you will, to ask them what are their expectations about NextGen TV or ATSC 3.0. Kind of what are they hearing? What do they think is going to happen? What do they think the capabilities are? What do they think the timeline looks like? And as you might expect, it's a bit of a mixed bag. Different people have different levels of understanding, different expectations. So that's something that we in the industry side need to try to get synced up to really have a meaningful impact in the broader marketplace. So here are just a collection of some of the questions that I've run across talking to people across the ecosystem. I won't read all these. You can get the deck, or you can probably read faster than I can speak anyway. But what expectations should agencies and marketers have for NextGen and local TV advertising? They want to know about what services are available, what kind of data might be available, and different kinds of opportunities. Can they go to mobile? And what kind of data? Can they get broadcast or first-party data? And for services, what kind of ad units might be available? Are they interactive ad units? Can they do dynamic ad insertion kinds of things? And split scripts, split copy kind of executions. So from the advertising perspective, a lot of questions, and some of the agency people and brands think they know the answers, which could be true, but probably not in the short run. So some expectations kind of have to be level set there. One of the things that's most exciting about the advertising, to the advertising community for NextGen TV is the idea that it brings data and the ability to target that inventory with NextGen TV and make it interactive. So you get the best of the power of linear TV with the best of what digital media are able to do. That's the thing that's super exciting to advertisers and their agencies. And then questions about what are the different local groups doing. Obviously, we hear a lot about the Pearl Group and things like Spectrum Co. And some really interesting collaborative activities going on in the market. So there's a lot happening. So people just get, it's hard for them to kind of keep up to date with it all. From an advertising perspective, one of the things that I talk to, we want to monetize this new media platform, and advertising is going to be a key component of that revenue structure, of course. So for advertisers, they hear that, okay, NextGen TV, ATSC 3.0, COVID-19 is pacing us a bit slower than we had hoped, but 60 plus markets, sometime the end of 2020-ish into the first quarter or so of 2021, maybe 60 plus markets will be lit up with multiple stations with 3.0. So advertisers say, great, so we can start using this in 2021. But then, we point out it is a two-sided market. So the broadcasters can do their part, but then we need to have a penetration of 3.0 receivers, which are starting to come to the market. And then we need to have consumer adoption. So from an advertiser perspective, what they're really excited about is being able to target audience segments inside that 3.0 coverage footprint. And if they're going to do targeting, that means they want to get to less than a full broadcast audience. That's really the value proposition. So they want to see at least 50% consumer penetration on a household basis for 3.0 before they think it becomes a really competitive ad platform. I'll say that. And then there's all kinds of things that go into this. Linear TV selling, to focus on the sales aspect of it, still has some manual components. There's some automation, workflow automation, that's good. But to really be competitive in the space, going to the Trio transmission platform is the key step. But there's a whole lot of back-end stuff and kind of middleware that needs to all come together to really make broadcast TV as competitive as it can be with digital media. And then pricing and packaging all of this stuff. What are NextGen TV stations' business models? Certainly advertising fits into it. There's a lot more kind of creativity and innovation that will happen in advertising, but there's other things outside that core marketplace of advertising and marketing, other uses of the spectrum that TV groups are very excited to explore and have been exploring. So again, I won't go through all of these, but there's kind of a shopping list of things that we on the industry side need to kind of take account of as we start to message out to the broader communities. So we've had the chance to work with Sam's group, and you'll hear from Sam in just a moment on a couple of different projects I just like to call out. Rethinking advertising, local TV advertising with ATSC 3.0. We did a report with one of the groups that reports to Sam, NAB Pilot. So you can go to nabpilot.org and download that report. It's a complimentary report. We also did a project rethinking local TV advertising with ATSC 3.0. So starting, the ATSC 3.0 is focused a lot on the tech, but the business models are really becoming proximate. We need to get going with those. So it's kind of cool to have a couple of assets that we can make available for you that tie directly into probably the main economic engine, which will be advertising. So speaking of economic engines and different kinds of possibilities for how broadcasters can monetize their investments in ATSC 3.0 and what the timeline probably looks like, at least on a relative basis. At BIA, one of the things we do is local ad spend forecasting for all media markets for 16 different media platforms and 95 different business verticals. So every market for every business in these 95 verticals across 16 different media, including TV over the air, TV online, over the top or connected TV, and so on. We do ad forecasts for that. So if we roll up all that if we roll up all the local ad spend across all those markets to a national level, this is what I'm showing here. And the bottom lines here, the blue on the bottom, that's TV over the air ad spend. So 2020 is actually, we have adjusted this because of COVID-19, took TV ad spend in 2020 down a bit. But generally, I'm just trying to show a shape graph here to show you the revenue structure as we go forward through the 2020s, as we're forecasting out now with ATSC 3.0. So without entry into the 3.0 market segments that I'll talk about in a moment, we would see the CAGR, the compound annual growth rate for broadcast TV over the decade at about a 3.8% baseline. With entry into some of the market segments that 3.0 allows broadcasters to participate in, we'd increase that to about 8% compound annual growth rate. So the advanced TV services really improve the growth rate for the investment in local broadcast TV infrastructure. So looking at this chart, it's kind of a lot. We're throwing at you here. The blue bottom one is over the air revenue. The TV online, basically owned and operated assets, websites and mobile apps, that's the orange space above that. And then the little gray bar so far, trace line above that is over the top video, which our methodology tries to localize on connected TV, since that's where the most of the audience impressions and ad inventory gets created. So relatively high growth rate, but still very small compared to linear TV. Then on top of that, a big part of the economic structure for local TV is subscriber revenue or retransmission. So that we see holding up pretty well. Generally we see the TV business, local TV business holding up pretty well. As we start to get into 2025 and beyond, two more things come into this area chart. Advanced TV, which we defined as anything that a local TV operator sells beyond advertising using gender and age. So being able to use household targeting or some sort of geofencing. That's advanced TV that can be offered with ATSC 3.0. We think, several years out, we'll start to see that 50% penetration I was talking about earlier for consumers that will excite advertisers to come in and start to do targeting. So that will be another revenue component, incremental to the linear, traditional kind of advertising. And in the top shape, I'll just talk briefly about, that is the non-core kind of opportunities that ATSC 3.0 local TV groups can get into. So non-advertising based. and probably non-TV programming based. It could be spectrum leases or other kinds of spectrum-based business dealing with the Internet of Things, different business models that are not core to broadcasting, but in adjacent markets and adjacent to the spectrum assets. Not so much the programming and advertising and other assets, news, weather that TV brings to it, but entering into other market segments. And again, will be incremental, ROI on those operations. So for the advertising, I'll spend a little bit more time thinking about this. The big platforms that advertisers love are video. High value, high engagement, especially premium content. So in the two right-hand columns, we've got basically connected TV is what that is, but it's over the top, connected TV, or sometimes you can aggregate services like Hulu Live or YouTube TV or Pluto. We call those virtual MVPDs, multi-video program distributors. So MVPD or cables on the right. Next to that is sort of connected TV. They can do a lot, but there's some things that they kind of get some struggles with: privacy, brand safety, fraud for the connected TV. So great. Local TV on the far left column does what it does really well, but it has some misses: interactive, addressable, dynamic ad insertion, serving mobile audiences, being able to show performance attribution, and bringing publisher data, first-party data. Can't do that. Critical in today's market for advertising. Now, as we go into NextGen TV, this is what we need to educate the market about. Those X's, those misses on local TV become pluses. Once NextGen TV gets to, say, 50% consumer penetration, we can turn a lot of those misses into check marks. And then NextGen TV becomes kind of a unique platform because they can do it all, essentially, relative to the other platforms of cable and connected TV. And from the consumer's perspective, actually, this may be relatively seamless. They may not even know what platform they're on, but there will be some unique capabilities that NextGen TV brings to the market that will be kind of interesting. So here is an eye chart, a lot of things happening in a chart that I'm not going to go into. Two things I'll call out. One, that figure on the right. If you look at the URL below the figure, that'll direct you to the report that this chart comes from. Here's how the marketplace is starting to visualize what 3.0 does and how it fits into the broader video ecosystem. So here it shows what connected TV does, what multi-channel, multi-video program distributors do, ATSC 1.0, and it starts to envision what ATSC 3.0 looks like. You can see that red arrow, kind of a dotted trace line, not quite here yet, but it combines broadcast powers with internet powers, since it uses an IP native format, which means it plays well with other things in the internet. So regular TV, addressable TV, ATSC 3.0 is kind of a logical outcome of the stacks, the layers on top that get shown there. ATSC 3.0 has the possibility to bring a lot together. That's one of the reasons why it's so exciting in the advertising and marketing space. And why is it exciting? The bullet points in the left call out some of the specifics here. So it's going to bring competition. Advertisers will have a choice beyond the duopoly or triopoly to get to data-defined audience segments and deliver premium quality video. Exciting to them. Different kinds of targeting. And there's some technical capabilities, not just on the transmit side, but also on the receive side. What kinds of storage capability, how can you cache ads, and are those server side or client side ad calls, and so on and so forth. And then getting into workflow, inventory management, we need to see more development and adoption there by broadcasters. And audience measurement would be interesting. Broadcasters will be able to collect first-party data under some of these operating scenarios. That has high value in today's marketplace. So kind of to sum it up, ATSC 3.0, NextGen TV can bring the possibility for a business model that broadcasters can bring to market that allows broadcasters to match content to audience segments, data-defined audience segments, to performance. What happens when those audience segments see an ad? What do they do? And that can be allocated to specific media channels so advertisers can see what TV actually returns. Not just planning on GRPs, but planning on performance. How many phone calls, how much foot traffic, how much e-commerce happened. And so for content, audience, and performance, I'll just call out here a few of the companies and kind of what they're up to there. So there's work going on in these important areas. This, generally the message that's so important is NextGen TV as a technology is fabulous, but it has to play well with a number of other parts of the overall business model and with a whole stack of technologies and data. And a lot of that's in place, and so it'll play out pretty nicely. And speaking of data, I'll just call out one more asset around data in ATSC 3.0. And again, this involves Sam, your group, and we're always so appreciative to be able to work with your team. We were talking about ATSC 3.0 and data, and what does that mean? What does the data landscape mean for ATSC 3.0 from a broadcaster perspective? So we were called in the Sam's team to kind of brainstorm that a bit. And we came up with a bunch of different business models: first-party data, audience analytics and insights, addressability, attribution, content distribution networks, alerts and warnings. So there's several different business models, and a number of these are outside the core market of broadcasters of advertising, content distribution network and alerts and warnings, for example. So in this report, also compliments of NAB and Sam's group. Go to that URL, download it, and you'll get a kind of a deep sense of thinking as to what's possible in terms of business. And there's also a Excel file that lists, I think we're up over 100 companies that are active in this space that you want to learn from. So final thoughts: NextGen TV, clear paths to revenue growth, addressing pain points that exist in today's advertising marketplace. Throughout our forecast period, linear TV is going to retain most of the local ad dollars. Advanced TV will go on top of that. Retransmission, we think, will be pretty solid. The OTT component and advanced TV component will bring in nice incremental dollars. And then the non-core opportunities, data, broadcasters offering data as a wireless platform in local markets, that has a lot of upside. So I have to do something corny. So I'll say data in the marketplace now is so valuable. So if data is new oil, corny alert on, local TV operators might be forgiven for mistaking their towers for oil rigs, because that will allow them to get into a whole new marketplace. So NextGen TV plus data, we see this as high value, high impact, marrying premium video to target audiences, something that's really important for the marketplace to be able to interact with. So Sam, that's what I had to say, and looking forward to your comments. And I know you guys are doing so much, it's going to be hard to pick and choose what to highlight here, but let me turn it over to you, Sam.
All right, great. Thanks, Rick. I am going to, let's see if I can share my screen. Hopefully everybody is seeing that now. Rick, it's always great to hear from you. I always learn so much and appreciate your thoughtful approach and also data-driven nature of what you're doing as well. You may know that I worked at Capital Broadcasting for almost 19 years. And while I was there, I was part of the first digital television transition. And going back to 1997, you kind of say, well, why are we doing this? Why are we going from analog to digital? And at the time said, we're going to do it because it's better, and better is better. So that's why we did the transition from analog to digital, is because we wanted to be better. Our CEO at the time, Jim Goodman, was looking for a better picture. Primarily is the idea of what he was going for at the time. But, if I fast forward some 20 years later, when I was chairman of the ATSC's committee that was studying NextGen TV, his son, now the chief operating officer and a NAB board member, we were talking about it, and he said very simply, as his dad had, but a little bit differently, it would be better if we had something better. And so that's really like what underlies all of this, with the rapid pace of change and all sorts of wireless networking. If you think back, over that 20-year period, about the growth of Wi-Fi, about going from 2G to 3G to 4G to 5G, it's really important that broadcasting also improve what its capabilities are. And ATSC 3.0 is certainly better. I'm not going to go into all of the technical details, but just sort of from a business perspective, you are talking about better picture. You are talking about better audio. You're talking about the interactivity that Rick touched on. That actually leads to better engagement. You're going to have better distribution because of the IP transport nature. So basically, broadcasting is now using internet protocol as its transport layer, and that's going to mean better interfacing with other IP networks and devices. There's better security if you want to have content protection, and then you've also got the better ability, and I think this is very important, to configure the transmission in your market. So you can set up different sets of modulation encodings. You can have different PLPs. You can do both of those at the same time to create some really unique types of delivery. And then, of course, you have the opportunity to do a single frequency network to really raise the signal level, which will enable better reception, including by mobile devices and potentially automobiles. But we are doing all of this certainly in the midst of the spectrum repack, and so nearly 1,000 stations are moving, and you know, about 3/4 of those, I guess, have moved already, maybe a little bit more than that. Of course, phase 9 has been moved. Stations were given the opportunity to move from phase 9 into phase 10 as part of the COVID-19 relief and our efforts in lobbying the FCC. But then phase 10, we anticipate, will probably be extended. We'll have to see how that goes. But the good news in this for the adoption of ATSC 3.0 is that for folks who have those new GatesAir transmitters that are part of making the spectrum repack, they can simply upgrade the exciter on those, and then you will be able to have a 3.0 transmitter with only having to do the exciter upgrade as opposed to having to do an entire system upgrade. We do at NAB have worked on what it would look like to transition. We released this at last year's show, but I do like to remind people that it is available if your market is thinking about transitioning. We would encourage you to download this guide and to use it. It's really targeted for management executives. It is not meant as a technical deep dive. I'm not going to tell you there's not some technical discussion in there, because certainly there is, but it's really meant to address transition issues on a market basis and offer some best practices for how that might take place. If you are thinking about being a host station yourself, I would encourage you to go to the ATSC website at atsc.org, and in their resources section, Pearl has a host station manual. So the folks at Pearl have done a lot of work in Phoenix with that model market and the Phoenix partnership, and from that they've created a very helpful host station manual that really does a deep dive into what you might want to do if you're thinking about being a host station. Other things that we have done is interops. And these interops are very important, especially as it relates to a lot of the interactivity that is going to be out there, as well as all of the advanced features in terms of modulation, encoding, and otherwise. This is some photos from an interop we did in Cleveland. The folks at News Press and Gazette have hosted them for us in Santa Barbara. The Phoenix partners have hosted us in Phoenix, and it's really an opportunity to get folks from the professional equipment manufacturers, from the receiver manufacturers, as well as broadcasters together to work on some of these new capabilities and to ensure that they indeed work across all different sets. This is actually a screenshot that came from an application that Sony built, but what you're looking at is this Sony application running on I believe this is on a LG TV set, and what you can see is all of the various APIs that are in there. And so, normally a broadcaster might not be worried about an API, a web programmer might be worried about an API, but in this case with 3.0 and you have the ability to write interactive applications using HTML5, then those interactive applications need to be able to make application calls. And this is an example of some of the early test sets that were in there in an application. Again, it's important that this same app run across all different sets the same way, and that leads us to the NextGen TV logo. So as a part of the rollout, the Consumer Technology Association has developed this logo. This logo will be visible on the packaging of NextGen TV sets or ATSC 3.0 capable sets. And to earn this logo, you have to go through conformance testing. That conformance testing has been developed by the ATSC. They actually have a conformance testing subgroup that gets together and agrees on what sorts of tests need to go in there. But those sets will earn this logo, and then when a consumer goes into their retailer, be it a Best Buy, a Walmart, a Fry's, or whatever the case may be, they can look for a set that has this NextGen TV logo on it, and they'll know that it will be ATSC 3.0 capable. And earlier this year, because it is always a got to be multiple industries working together. But earlier this year at the Consumer Electronics Show, LG, Samsung, and Sony did make announcements of television sets that are going to be on the market. And this year, I believe some of the Samsungs are already available, and LG and Sony, if they're not out yet, will be by the Christmas time. But it was 20 different sets ranging in size from 55 to 85 inches, all of them 4K, and the Samsungs are actually all even 8K sets. So these are higher end television sets that are available, and will include both ATSC 1.0 and ATSC 3.0 receive chips in them, or capabilities. But this is one that I found interesting because this really, I think, speaks to the consumer interest in ATSC 3 in a very unscientific way, a Kickstarter campaign. And this was a Kickstarter campaign for this box here, which would be a ATSC 3 receiver box. And you can see if you look closely that they had a goal of 50,000, and they had just crossed it at $50,163 pledged. They had 241 backers with 29 days to go. So I think they hit their goal in like 1 or 2 days. But 10 days later, I went back, and this was just yesterday, and they were at over 400,000 pledged with almost 2,000 backers. So, and they still have another 10 days to go. So I think there is some very real interest in NextGen TV on the consumer side, and a desire to get these receivers, which I believe they say will be priced around $200 a piece. Now, if I'm a broadcaster, I've got to be broadcasting something to reach those receivers, and I'm thinking about that better audio, that better picture, and the interactive experiences. Now, had we been able to gather physically in Las Vegas, this was a demo that we were going to show, and it really speaks to some of the core benefits of what we're talking about, as well as the combination of broadcast and broadband. So, of course, 4K is something that a lot of programming is being produced in now, and then it's down converted into HD for distribution, but 4K broadcasts can take place using the NextGen standard. This is not possible on ATSC 1, but that 4K video uses a great deal of bandwidth. Even with the new high efficiency video codecs that are there, it's still those millions of pixels take up a lot of bandwidth. And so broadcasters are going to be in a scenario where they're channel sharing initially. So the idea of a typical rollout market is that a station will go on the air. It has been referred to as a lighthouse station. That station will probably host 4 or 5 channels broadcasting at probably a 1080p resolution with some HDR, but if they wanted to do 4K, that takes a lot of bandwidth. And so doing it just over the broadcast tower may not be feasible in a early deployment mode where you're doing channel sharing. But even later, you may decide that there's other ways that you'd like to handle it. So if you combine broadcast and broadband, and this brings me back to, again, ATSC 3.0 is based on the Internet Protocol as its transport layer. And you use something called a scalable ATSC 3.0 encoder. You actually can split that into a base layer, which would be your HD with HDR that you would broadcast, and then you would also deliver another segment of that called your enhancement layer via broadband. And so the receiver is smart enough to recognize I have 2 IP streams coming in and I need to put those back together. And now if I have that broadcast and broadband connection, I'm able to deliver a full 4K picture. If I'm just watching over the air and don't have that broadband, I'm still getting a 1080p with HDR, which is going to be better than the pictures that are available today. So we think that's pretty exciting. Another thing that you can see tomorrow as part of NAB Show Express is an interactive application that we worked with CBS on. And so what you see here is just a frame grab from that. And if you look in your bottom right-hand corner, you see the dish logo and you see press up to see more. That is an application that is showing you that there is interactivity that is available here. And I'm just going to go forward to another screen and you can see the type of carousel that comes up. Again, all this is written in HTML5. You can do things like look at the recipes in detail. You could then share those to your phone. You could share them to Facebook. You could buy the ingredients from them. It's recognizing that there's certain things that are good to navigate on the television set. There's other things that are better for your mobile device. You can so there's several things here. You can get information about the chef that they are interviewing. You can get their recipes. You can buy their book, or you can also browse and see other episodes, if you will, of the dish. And all of those are tied to use cases that will actually drive new revenue and different revenue. And that revenue could come from the actual purchase of the books or the purchase of the ingredients or the increased engagement that you get, or again, all of this is able to be done from your remote control using your up, down, left, right, and OK buttons. So that sort of 5-button navigation, and every one of those clicks also generates engagement data, which is going to be valuable as well. When we look at, and so I encourage you to go to the NABShowExpress.com website and then register, and you can seek out that session. Jeff Glore does a great job of explaining what's going on, and then Greg Jarvis from FinCons really walks you through a very detailed demonstration, and it's really very nice. So this is some slides that I created, last year after NAB Show, where we had 8 experimental stations. There were 40 stations that had identified who was going to be the host station in that market, and there were another 21 stations that needed to be decided, but the market had committed to deploy. When we looked at those numbers, we were it added up again to I think 61 or 62 stations in total. reaching over 70% of the U.S. population. And again, each of those stations would be a lighthouse station, likely hosting multiple broadcasters for that market. This map actually came off of the ATSC website, and it talks about markets that are already on the air are in orange. Ones that are very near to being on the air are in the sort of light blue, and then the other markets that are identified are in the darker blue. So a little bit different view with updated data directly from the ATSC as to what the deployment is going to look like. And I personally know of a couple of markets that people have told me that they're thinking about that may not be reflected in this map. So that's encouraging. But beyond the additional markets, some folks are deploying single frequency networks. The Phoenix partnership is going to be standing up a second tower this year, and that will be with an SFN. So that's very exciting as they'll begin to take advantage of those capabilities that ATSC 3.0 offers. But of course, all of this is being done in this time of COVID-19. If you did not read the article in TV Technology, that was an interview with my good friend Richard Friedel. This is a photograph from that article. I would encourage you to go read that. I love the industrial-sized jug of hand sanitizer, and Richard really spoke eloquently about a lot of the things that they had to do just to stay on the air and continue to operate during this time of a pandemic. But he also spoke about ATSC 3.0, and he basically said, look, it's still happening. We're still very much behind it. Of course, there may be some delays, and instead of hitting that 60 plus markets this year, it may be more in the neighborhood of somewhere in the range of 20 to 40 markets. But all of that is just due to a natural delay that is coming from the pandemic, and it's not a sign of a lack of commitment by broadcasters or the industry. So I think that as folks are thinking about deploying NextGen TV and ATSC 3.0, it's still very much on pace. You may have seen the recent announcement from Sinclair about Las Vegas market lighting up. And the important thing to note on those is that when that happens, that also means that you have multiple station groups and owners and networks and syndicators and just the whole chain of infrastructure in the broadcast industry that have and partnerships that have agreed that that this is something that they want to pursue. So it may seem like it's just one market, but when you start to talk about all of the different players that had to come together to make that happen, it's really pretty powerful. I do want to call your attention to NAB Show Express, because obviously I'm here with you today from my living room, as opposed to being with you at the Las Vegas Country Club a few weeks ago, just prior to our regularly scheduled NAB show. The Express version of the show, we have a lot of great content. We have some wonderful contributions. Glenn Reitmeyer did a fabulous job with a look back, actually, at the Grand Alliance. This is the 25-year anniversary of the Grand Alliance and the debut of digital television at NAB Show. And so he did a retrospective look back as well as a pivot forward, and he looks with some of our broadcast engineers at the promise of ATSC 3 over the next 25 years. We have Pearl did a couple of sessions. Magid has some sessions. The CBS demo is up there. The Consumer Technology Association, along with Samsung, Sony, and LG, have a session. The ATSC, Madeline Nolan and Richard Friedel and Brian Markwalter and our very own Lynn Claudy, who is the chairman of the ATSC, they do a wonderful session. So lots of great content, lots of good info. tomorrow. I know it's not the same as being together in Las Vegas, but I do know that we've done a fabulous job of bringing a lot of great content together, and all of that is available through NAB Show Express. You just need to go and register. It is free, and then of course our Broadcast Engineering and Information Technology Conference is available there as well. Over 70 sessions. So if you're on the engineering or the IT side, definitely check out the Broadcast Engineering and Information Technology Conference, and that is going to be there tomorrow and Thursday. Those sessions will be running for the first time, and then they'll be available on demand as well, so you can get those anytime. And with that, I will say thank you, and I apologize for the initial technical difficulties.
Thank you very much, Sam and Rick. Again, this is fantastic webinar, and just wanted to, before we get into the Q&A segment, I want to do a few important announcements here. First off, as mentioned earlier, just a second ago, this webinar is a co-production of not only GatesAir but NAB Show Express, as Sam just mentioned. We want to definitely make sure to give a shout out there, because with an exhibitor marketplace and a massive amount of informational sessions, like you just said, it's definitely that comprehensive digital experience that broadcast professionals are looking for. So again, register for free and learn more at nabshowexpress.com. Please enter your questions into the Q&A pane of the MS Teams system here, and we'll answer them in a first come, first served manner. And this webinar's recording will be available at the same link that you used to sign in on, and it'll also be available on GatesAir.com and our YouTube channel later today. In addition, we'll be adding this webinar to our educational video library at GatesAirUniversity.com if you'd like to check that out. If you didn't already know, this webinar, like all of the webinars on GatesAir.com, qualifies for 1/2 SBE recertification credit, identified under Category I of the SBE's recertification schedule. For more information, please visit the certification section at sbe.org. So without further ado, let's get on to the questions and away from pressing buttons, because that's where the danger is. There's a question from Stephen, who asked, is there an app creator community that's excited about all this, NextGen TV and ATSC 3.0 stuff? Are the televisions planning on letting third-party app development for manipulating that data that's being sent out? What kind of control are app creators and developers going to have with the data that's going to be sent out via this awesome technology? That's for either Rick or Sam.
So I'll start if that's okay, Rick.
Yep.
Okay. So is there an app creator community that's excited about this? I think the answer is yes, absolutely, and that's predominantly right now within the broadcasters themselves, because broadcasters are really multi-platform digital media companies. They already have web developers, they already have app developers, they already have entire teams of folks that are devoted to developing applications that traditionally run on a PC or a mobile phone, but now using those exact same languages and tools, they can write applications that would run on a television set using ATSC 3.0. So I personally know that there are a number of broadcasters that are very excited about this type of opportunity and are looking to develop applications themselves. The application that you can see tomorrow that I gave a little bit of a preview of that was developed with CBS, we worked on that along with a company called FinCons Group, and Greg Jarvis will be walking through that. And there's a pretty big community of developers in Europe that use the HBBTV standard to develop apps, and so there are a lot of similarities there, but definitely some differences between the ATSC3 approach. But we expect that those app developers to be engaged as well, and so I do think there's a healthy appetite for the apps. I do think that now is a time for a lot of great experimentation. I think that as Rick was talking about, there's not yet a critical mass yet. So now is the time to sort of, crawl, walk, run. Now's the time to really sort of get started and experiment with it.
And Keith, I'll give one more example if I could. Also part of the NAB Show Express. There's a session, I think it's scheduled for Thursday afternoon, a panel that I was able to put together for the event, which was a wonderful opportunity. One of the speakers on the panel that deals with advanced TV selling, and it's on the theme we're talking about here, this app community and NextGen TV. But I'll do a shout out to Zita Manson, who is co-founder, CEO of OpenZNet. One of the great values from an advertising perspective is the ability to have data-driven audience segmentation and activation on 3.0 and other advanced TV platforms like connected TV and so on. So Azita's she's a member of that community, and then Sam, I know she works closely with your team.
Yes.
So that's another example of someone who's doing some really innovative work, just like you were saying, Sam.
Yes, very true, very true. Azita did a lot of work with us and developed applications for NBC and the Olympics back in 2018, as well as some of our news-driven applications where folks are able to browse news, or we did some sports with some multi-channel multi-view sort of apps. So you're exactly right.
It's being able to play with the sky being the limit with this new technology and where it touches the IT spectrum. That's as someone who is an HTML5 developer, that it's kind of interesting. You're speaking my language here. So we also have a question from Marty Sachs. He was wondering, I guess in general, what would you guys consider the biggest issues that broadcasters will face in actually making this kind of conversion? Probably a little retrospective here of when ATSC 1.0, if you want to call it that, happened. What do you see with this transition, the biggest challenges?
Rick, you want me to start?
Sure, go ahead, Sam.
Okay, so I think the what is unavoidable is that this standard is not backwards compatible. And so what that means is that there's a good deal of coordination and effort that has to go into making the transition. And that's being done at a time where, if we were to look back at the last transition from analog to digital, every broadcaster was given a second channel on which to simulcast. We don't have that luxury now. And we have to figure out how to do it with the spectrum that we have. And so what that is leading to is these channel sharing agreements where broadcasters are going to, have to work together in ways that they never have had to do before. But the great news, I think, is that people see the real value and benefit of getting to ATSC 3.0, and so they're that's why you see so many markets and so many owners and so many networks that are coming together to say, yes, let's pursue this and let's figure out the channel sharing agreement so that that we can get ATSC 3.0 on the air and begin to make the transition.
And Keith, one thing, I kind of look at things from a different perspective, more on the strategy side of what's happening with 3.0. Business models and so on. And one thing that's becoming more energized in the conversation around 3.0 with broadcasters, and maybe not so much an obstacle, but the technology community has done a fantastic job pulling this all together and getting it launched in the marketplace, moving from trials to full market commercial deployment. So I'll tease a bit here, but in a sense, the kind of business strategists in these companies have been able to kind of look on from above while this infrastructure is being designed, tested and built out and now deployed. And now it's kind of like, Sam, the people you work closely with are passing the baton over to the business people saying, okay, we built it, what are you going to do with it? So again, I'm kind of teasing here a little bit, but now it's like, what are the business models? What are the revenue expectations? What's the timing of those revenues? And what are the calls for capital, either operating capital or capital budgeting? And when can we expect to earn a return on that? What are the business models? What are the risk levels? So I would say really over the past year, I've been exposed to a lot more conversations, from big TV groups and networks and a lot of other people throughout the community who kind of feel the screws being put to them. Geez, now we have to actually do this. It's prime time. It's no longer a technology project. It's something that's going to go in the marketplace. And this is our chance to leapfrog what's out there now. We need to do this smartly, quickly, and can't afford to make too many mistakes. So it's sort of the challenge now is, what do we do with this other than PowerPoint presentations?
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty fantastic field of dreams. And so, yeah, there's a lot that has to be done. And that goes back to Sam pointing out that now is that time to kind of experiment and play in a pretty unprecedented playground here. So I guess conversely, this is a question of mine as we come to the close of the hour. I'd say conversely, what do you guys think of outside of issues and complications? What would you say is probably the one cool thing that you think people should pay attention to, if nothing else, about NextGen TV's potentials? I'll start with Rick.
Sure. Okay, thanks. And it's a little bit hard to get specific here, but broadcast radio and broadcast TV in their beginnings were like unbelievable innovations. I mean, they changed society. Now we have so many different ways to communicate, and these days we were in quarantine and self-quarantine and work from home and homeschooling, people have gotten a lot more familiar with technology. I mean, raise your hand if you haven't done 10 Zoom calls this week or 10 Microsoft Team calls.
Whether you wanted to or not.
Exactly. But the thing is, people are getting familiar with the technology. So for better or worse, we're in a moment where technology has made us socially proximate at a time when we have to be physically socially distant. Mm-hmm. There is a familiarity and competence with technology like never before in society. So at this moment, owing the circumstances, the broadcast TV community is about to introduce a brand new platform with very unique capabilities that can do a lot of what other platforms can do and more. Going to a relatively technology literate and heavy media consuming marketplace. So, if you're trying to say necessity is the mother of invention and we're looking for innovation, opportunities to innovate, the ingredients that we're facing right now in the marketplace, if seen kind of from a big picture and put against a strategy, can be really optimal to create opportunities for broadcasters to introduce themselves into a technology savvy, heavy media consumer marketplace looking for something next. And that something next can be NextGen TV.
Agreed. Sam?
Yeah, for me, I think it's at a high level, the notion that broadcasters are going to be high power, high tower, wireless IP networks, and if you think about the amount of data that flows over the internet, 80% of it is video, and if you say broadcast is now IP, what does that mean? It means that we have the ability to do applications that are both broadcast and broadband. And I tried to show a couple of examples of how that might be used to deliver new and different types of programming, whether that was doing HD with a scalable encoder up to true 4K, or the types of interactive applications. But as Rick mentioned Zoom, I'm sitting here thinking, there's no reason that somebody couldn't write an app that says, I am going to bring in, my broadcast TV, and I'm going to, drop in camera feeds from a couple of my buddies, and we're going to be able to, combine that type of experience. I mean, really, that combination of broadcast and broadband and is going to create all sorts of new opportunities for engagement. And I know that the smart business people will figure out, how to make that really a better business as well, which for me means, continuing a business that is really fundamental to our democracy. So I'm very excited about that.
It's a multi-win scenario with a pretty awesome tool with a lot of neat potential. So yeah, definitely. I know we're at the end of the hour here. Again, thanks to both Rick and Sam. You guys, we really appreciate you sharing your time with us today. We definitely appreciate it. And on the screen here, I've got a thank you and ways for people to get in touch with you. And if they have any other questions, I'll actually share the questions here from this particular webinar for you. And again, for the next best thing to meeting up in Las Vegas, please visit nabshowexpress.com, which is a complete digital experience for broadcasters. For more information on those unlimited online sessions and access to the virtual exhibitor marketplace and other ways to get connected with people, again, that is nabshowexpress.com. Once again, this webinar is going to be available, its recording, at GatesAir.com, on our YouTube channel, and at GatesAirUniversity.com, or simply by using the same link that you used to view this very presentation. So join us again this Thursday as we continue this week's theme of planning for the future with our webinar titled TV Network Planning, Gap Fillers, and SFN Application and Design Guidelines. GatesAir's Steve Rossiter will review technical options, equipment selection, criteria for network expansion and optimization, various planning tools, antenna selection, and a whole lot of other considerations for creating a seamless viewing experience for the consumer. So you don't want to miss that one. For more information about that webinar and to see all of the crazy webinars we've had over the past month, please visit gatesair.com/v-events. for virtual events. If you have any ideas for future webinar topics, including course material for GatesAir University, please let us know at marketing@gatesair.com, or you can email me directly at kadams@gatesair.com. So again, thanks everybody for this wonderful GatesAir Connect virtual event and for coming out and sharing time with us. For Rick Ducey, for Sam Matheny, and everyone at BIA, NAB, and GatesAir, this is Keith Adams saying, stay safe, stay happy, and let's stay connected. Bye, everybody.